Hello and welcome back to another Craig and Dave Unscripted. This is the third video in our series highlighting and showcasing Mission Encodeable. So let's bring Harry and Anna back on. Hi, both of you. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us again. So this week we are, oh no, I won't say what we're going to do. I'm going to let Dave say what we're going to do. I'll say what we did last week. So last week we were looking at Mission Encodable's level 2. That's why it's called Unscripted, Dave. Last week we were looking at level 2. So basically how to add selection to your statements, and Harry and Anna took us through their level 2. So Dave, what are they going to be taking us through today?
Yeah, so as everybody already knows, level 3 is all about an introduction to condition-controlled iterations using while loops. And so over to Anna. This is so professional.
Brilliant. Over to you, Anna.
Yeah, so as Dave said, this level will be looking at while loops, and that's basically all we do in this level. We just go through while loops. We look at creating infinite loops, which is not what you should be doing, but we just do really in-depth while loop practice, which is really good because it can be quite confusing. And we don't do it with for loops, and Harry will talk a bit about why that is later. But it's quite a nice level because you can start making more complex programs. But that's what we do, just while loops. Make sure you're really good at them before moving on. And I'll hand over to Harry.
Excellent, thank you. So this here is the introductory screen to level 3, and so it says it's an introduction to condition-controlled iterations using while loops. And the capstone project, which is the one they build at the end, as you should hopefully recall if you've watched level 2, is the password checker. So it's a program that uses a while loop essentially to just keep on looping around until the user manages to enter the right password. So here we can see it's saying welcome, and it's asking me to enter my password. That is using the level 1 skills from inputs or build nicely. And if I try and enter a password here that I know is wrong, so password, I can see that's incorrect. And I can try and guess the wrong password as many times as I like and won't let me in. And if I try the right password, which I think is let me in, there we are. Excellent. Login successful. So that's the project that they'll build at the end of this level. And I think it's a really nice way of consolidating everything they've done towards while loops, because it just demonstrates how, you know, a loop can be used in a real world application, you know, checking a password, which is something, you know, we probably all log into several things a day. And that's probably something similar to what's going on in the background. So it's really good to see how the code that you're writing has its real world applications. So I'll start the level and I'll show you a little bit of what's inside. So first of all, we just have this step here to tell people what iteration is. So obviously, so far, the students haven't encountered that term before, but we think it's important that they learn it. So we just cover it very briefly, but they'll probably know it, and hopefully that'll get them using the correct vocabulary when they want to talk about their programs, and also in exams where it's quite important. So after we have that step, we introduce them to while loops as ever. We show them what the syntax is, and we tell them what it is, and then we show them an example. So that's an example, perhaps in a car journey. I think everyone's experienced that before. Are we nearly there yet? And eventually you will arrive, and that's when the loop would exit. So I think probably what I should talk about now really is why you can see here we're doing while loops, but we don't have for loops in this level at all. And in fact, we only introduced them in level 6. So it's not just an oversight. We haven't completely forgotten about for loops, but it's quite an intentional decision that we've made, I think. Collectively, it's obviously the same in Times Code and Mission Encodeable, because we wanted to teach while loops first for a number of reasons. But first of all, we just think that by teaching them separately, students can get to master while loops first before they do for loops. And that way they'll know which loop they should be using, because they'll have had so much practice using while loops by the time that they get to for loops. You know, they'll be able to judge when a while loop's appropriate or when a for loop might be better by that point. And so that's the first reason. But also, I think as a student, I can attest to that for loops are often a lot more difficult for students. So by teaching while loops early on, it gives you a nice soft introduction to iterations. And then it means that by the time you get on to level 6, you've done so much coding and you've tackled so many problems, hopefully both from Mission Encodable and Time to Code, you'll be ready for it. And it won't even feel difficult to you because you'll have just got so used to it and you'll be really ready to take them on. So that's why they're introduced separately. And I think that hopefully will make the experience a lot smoother for students. So I'll just show you the final few steps in this level. So after we teach you about while loops, we go into kind of how we can loop forever. That is sometimes necessary. It's not necessarily what we'd recommend, but obviously we can use while true to do that. And I think sometimes it's important that we teach students about the things that they probably shouldn't be doing and how to do them, just so they can recognize it and they'll know why it might not always be the best idea. So it's the same.
And there's always exceptions, isn't there? Even something which is considered generally bad programming practice, sometimes there can be perfectly valid and legitimate ways for using it. I won't go into them now, but I can think of a number of situations in text-based programs that we've created before, Dave, where we've used infinite loops as a deliberate choice because we're trying to do something or achieve something. So yeah, I like that.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's really important that we teach students, you know, all the things that you can do with a while loop, even if it might not be the best example of how you'd use it in many cases. It's just good to be aware of it. And like, for example, in these break statements, you know,
the dreaded break statement.
I know.
I would the box. He's opened the box.
This worse than the infinite loop, but you're right.
But we have a whole step dedicated to it, and you can see how it works. I mean, and then we'll tell you why they're bad practice. So hopefully that's actually going to, you know, help students get to learn how they can best structure their programs, even if it might not be the best practice. And teachers probably are screaming out when they see that step. That's why we put it in there. And then by the time you get to the end of the level, you're ready to build that capstone project that I showed you earlier. So I think that rounds us nicely off on level 3, and hope that everyone will enjoy it. I wonder if there are any more questions or anything else you'd like to add, perhaps, Anna?
I have nothing to add. I think that was an excellent overview of level 3.
Yeah, I can't let the break statement go. You know me, I'm an old timer. I'm an old school coder. What's this all about? We don't believe in break statements. But interestingly, you know, we do frown on break statements because it introduces multiple ways of leaving the iteration, and a true good iteration should only have one exit point. However, having said that, it's, you know, quite often modern best practice that there are some situations where break statements are used legitimately for certain performance reasons and other reasons. And it's a debate that we often have with people that do programming for a living. They look at what we teach and they say, well, why are you teaching that and not that? And we say, well, you know, it's about embedding best practice. And they say, well, that isn't best practice. It's like, not today, it might not be in certain situations, but generally speaking, it's good practice. And so we should, you know, go in that direction. It's put, you know, walk before you run sort of thing. And also what's, you know, common in industry or acceptable in industry isn't necessarily acceptable in exam situations. So you've got to, again, be a little bit careful that what you're teaching is the most relevant thing for the students. And they're not going to see a break statement in an exam because from the example perspective, it's considered bad practice, even if it's acceptable today. So I think that's an interesting one to bring up there.
I just really wanted to add my thoughts on splitting, as you say, the count control and condition controlled loops together. And everyone knows who's a Craig and Dave follower for a while that Dave is Dave's the chap in our company who pretty much has a handhold in all our programming resources. We kind of divide and conquer different bits. And it's fair to say you sat down for a long time with Harry and Anna, and you all discussed the sequence of logical steps. And I think a lot of teachers, and indeed us in the past, you do input, output, then you do selection, then you do iteration. And you articulated it really well, Harry, so I don't need to repeat it all. But it's like, yeah, now we introduce iteration. Right, you've got different types of iterations, guys. You've got count control and condition control, and already you're muddying the waters. Yeah, I used to teach like that. And, you know, there's a lot of thought and effort that's been gone on the part of Harry, Anna, and Dave to think about the sequence of activities and the things you're learning. And the fact that just embed the while loop is probably a bit simple to get your head round. And if it's the only way you know how to do it, great. You'll probably find when you get to for loops, you'll think, well, I thought there was a limitation there. Look what I can do now. Look how this knowledge of iterations has expanded. But you're not confusing that now with while loops, which you've already mastered and probably carried on embedding in stuff that we do in level 4 and level 5. So I really, you know, I really like it. And as it's been iterated a couple of times before, that wasn't on purpose. All the levels and the skills and the stage that are introduced are exactly mirrored from Mission Encodeable and Time to Code, meaning you can jump backwards and forwards really well. So, yeah, I just wanted to double down on that. Anything else anyone wanted to add before we end for today?
I was just going to finish that off really, Craig, by saying, yeah, we have put a lot of thought into it, and the sequence of learning has not happened by chance. And we have broken with convention. We absolutely have. So the fact that we do structured programs and teach sub-programs, sub-routines, if you like, from level 1 is quite deliberate, because we know that if you do a lot of programming and then you get introduced to sub-programs later, you don't really see the point, and it's so difficult to break those habits. So we don't shy away from saying, look, let's get into the good habits early. And at the same time, absolutely, we've thought about, well, what are the sticking points for students? Where do they get stuck? Where do the misunderstandings come in? Where does the confusion come in? So we thought really carefully about the sequence, and we have broken with tradition. And yeah, absolutely, we don't teach while loops and for loops at the same time, because it just doesn't work out for the best that way, except for your most able students who can probably cope with anything. But of course, we have to remember that we're teaching all students, and some students will find programming difficult. So the way that we can make it a little bit easier is to consider very, very carefully that learning journey. And the other thing that we've done is we've split it out into sets of 3 levels. So level 1, level 2, level 3 are themselves effectively a unit. And what we say is, don't go to level 4 unless you have mastered levels 1, 2, 3, because obviously things only get more difficult from there. You can achieve a lot with just levels 1, 2, and 3, and you could teach levels 1, 2, and 3 at Key Stage 3, and don't go further than that until you're ready for the next set of 3 levels. And we've thought really carefully about what should be in each of the 3 levels. And at the end of each of those 3 levels, so level 3, level 6, level 9, those are the points where we've identified where students start to struggle and they can't make, for whatever reason, they can't make that next step. So they are perfect pause points to say, if you don't get this, don't go any further. Just do more of the same, until you actually understand what it is you're doing. And as Craig says, you can use Time to Code in conjunction with Mission Encodeable if you want to get a few more challenges if students need a bit more practice. But this is fantastic, loving it.
Brilliant. Anything else from you two before we wrap up for today? And if there isn't, give us a little preview of what's coming in level 4 and put you on the spot again.
Not from me, but I think I'm going to challenge Anna to the preview if you're up for it, Anna.
Yeah, all right. So in level 4, we have number operations. And I think we also touch just a little bit of string formatting. So you're starting to look at a bit more complicated things that you can do with numbers in Python and maths and that kind of thing. So a few more complicated methods of division in Python, the math module, that kind of thing. Yeah, that's what happens in level 4.
Yeah, I just pulled it up and I can confirm that is correct.
Well done, Anna. I love what you did there, Harry. Well done, Anna. Right, brilliant. Well, thank you very much again. And we will be back with Harry and Anna next week when we will be taking a look at level 4. Cheers for now, everyone. Bye-bye.